The Judgment of Stars. The Grand Assembly Hall floated in the void between stars, a magnificent structure of crystalline spires and shimmering energy fields. It had stood for 10,000 years as a symbol of galactic unity, where hundreds of civilizations gathered to resolve conflicts through words rather than weapons. Today, however, the hall trembled with tension thick enough to cut with a blade. Ambassador Marcus Reed stood in the center of the circular chamber, surrounded by rising tiers of seats that spiraled upward like a giant amphitheater. Each tier housed representatives from different worlds, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Some breathed methane, others existed as pure energy. Some had dozens of limbs, while others floated without bodies at all. But despite their differences, they all shared one thing in common today. They were united against humanity. Marcus was a tall man with gray streaks running through his dark hair, earned from 3 decades of diplomatic service. His Navy uniform bore no weapons, only the silver emblem of Earth on his chest. He had spent 15 years building relationships with these alien civilizations, learning their customs, respecting their traditions. He had believed they were friends. He had been wrong. High Chancellor Voron of the Ascended Collective rose from his throne at the highest point of the chamber. The Ascended were beings of pure light, their consciousness freed from physical form millions of years ago. When Voron spoke, his voice resonated directly in the minds of everyone present, bypassing the need for sound altogether. "We gather here to render judgment on the human species," Voron began, his luminous form pulsing with each word. "The charges are severe. The evidence is clear. Humanity stands accused of barbarism, aggression, and violation of the Sacred Peace Accord." Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but he remained silent. He had learned long ago that interrupting the Chancellor was considered a grave offense. He would have his chance to speak, though he doubted it would matter. The decision had already been made before this trial even began. The first witness came forward, a representative from the Keltharian Empire. The Keltharians were reptilian beings with scales that shimmered like precious gems. Their civilization was ancient and proud, built on strict codes of honor and nonviolence. Ambassador Skresh slithered to the speaking platform, his forked tongue flicking nervously. 3 cycles ago," Skresh hissed, his translator device converting his speech into common galactic language, "human colonists on the border world of Tellus IV were approached by pirates from the Broken Clans. Instead of negotiating or alerting the proper authorities, the humans responded with immediate violence. They destroyed 4 pirate vessels, killing everyone aboard. No mercy was shown. No quarter was given." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. He remembered Tellus IV. The pirates had attacked a farming colony, killed 17 settlers, including children, and were preparing to raid the settlement when the Colonial Defense Force intervened. But that context wouldn't matter here. Next came Representative Ilmara of the Singing Gardens, a species that resembled massive flowers with consciousness. Her petals drooped with sadness as she testified. "Humanity has refused to adopt peaceful energy harmonization. They continue to build weapons of mass destruction. Their warships carry enough firepower to crack planets. They stockpile missiles, railguns, and plasma cannons. This obsession with violence is unacceptable in our unified galaxy." More witnesses followed. The pattern was clear. Every testimony painted humanity as warlike, aggressive, and dangerous. The crystalline minds accused humans of being too emotional and irrational. The deep swimmers claimed human expansion was too rapid and reckless. The cloud dancers said human mining operations scarred beautiful worlds with industrial ugliness. Finally, Chancellor Voron turned his brilliant gaze toward Marcus. "Ambassador Reed, you may now speak in defense of your species. Choose your words with care." Marcus stepped forward to the speaking platform. He looked around the chamber at faces and forms he had once considered allies. Some wouldn't meet his gaze. Others stared with open hostility. A few showed what he thought might be regret, but not enough to change their votes. "Honored members of the Galactic Assembly," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the anger burning in his chest. "I stand before you not to deny our nature but to explain it. Yes, we build weapons. Yes, we train soldiers. Yes, we respond to violence with force when necessary. But you judge us without understanding why." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "You call the Tellus IV incident barbaric, but those pirates had already murdered 17 of our people, including 5 children. They were preparing to enslave the rest. We didn't have time to file diplomatic complaints or wait for peacekeepers who were 3 weeks away. We acted to save lives. Violence begets violence, Chancellor Vorin intoned. This is the fundamental truth that has kept our galaxy at peace for 5,000 years. Peace? Marcus felt his control slipping. You call this peace? The broken clans raid and pillage because they know you won't stop them. The devourer swarms consume entire ecosystems while you debate sanctions. The Shadow Syndicate traffics in slaves, and your response is to form committees. You've built a galaxy where predators thrive because you've forgotten how to fight back. The chamber erupted in outrage. Representatives shouted in 100 different languages and communication methods. Lights flashed. Chemicals sprayed. Energy fields crackled with anger. Chancellor Vorin raised his hands, and silence fell instantly. You prove our point, Ambassador Reed. Your first instinct is to criticize, to attack, to justify violence. Humanity is too primitive for our enlightened society. You cling to your weapons like children clutching security blankets. You cannot evolve past your aggressive nature. Marcus felt something break inside him. Not his spirit, but his illusions. He had spent so long trying to make humanity fit into their perfect, peaceful mold. He had argued for restraint, for diplomacy, for patience. He had truly believed they could be part of this galactic community. But now he saw the truth. The Assembly didn't want humanity to change. They wanted humanity to disappear. Very well, Marcus said quietly. If that is your judgment, then let us hear the sentence. The vote was swift and unanimous. 473 civilizations voted in favor. 0 opposed. 0 abstained. The resolution was read by Chancellor Vorin himself. Effective immediately, humanity is expelled from the Galactic Assembly. All human colonies outside the Sol system will be evacuated and relocated to isolated worlds. A containment barrier will be established around the Sol system using precursor technology. Humanity will remain within this barrier until such time as they prove themselves worthy of rejoining civilized society. This sentence has no time limit. It may last decades, centuries, or forever. Marcus felt the weight of those words like a physical blow. They weren't just being expelled. They were being imprisoned in their own home system. Cut off from the galaxy, isolated, quarantined like a disease. You condemn us for defending ourselves, Marcus said, his voice echoing in the silent chamber. You punish us for refusing to be victims. But hear me now, all of you. You're making a mistake. There are real threats in this galaxy. Threats that your diplomatic protests cannot stop. And when those threats come for you, when your perfect peace shatters like glass, you'll wish you had allies who knew how to fight. Threats can be negotiated with, Chancellor Vorin replied. All conflicts can be resolved through dialogue and understanding. That is the way of enlightenment. Marcus shook his head slowly. No, Chancellor. That's the way of fools who've been lucky enough never to face a real enemy. But your luck won't last forever. The final moment came at the edge of the Sol system 3 days later. Marcus watched from the bridge of the transport ship homeward bound, as 12 massive artifacts activated around humanity's home. The precursor devices were older than any known civilization, left behind by whatever species had ruled the galaxy before the current era. They generated enough power to contain stars themselves. One by one, the devices lit up with blinding white light. Energy barriers sprang into existence between them, forming a perfect sphere around the entire solar system. Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt, Jupiter, Saturn, all of it locked away behind walls of impossible energy. Captain Sarah Chen stood beside Marcus, her face grim. Sensors show the barrier is impenetrable. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. They've really done it. They've locked us away from the entire galaxy. Marcus nodded slowly. He felt tired, defeated. 15 years of work, 15 years of building bridges, all destroyed in a single day. He thought about the human colonies that had been scattered across dozens of worlds, now abandoned or relocated. He thought about the friendships he had made, now severed. He thought about humanity's dreams of reaching the stars, now ended. What do we do now, Ambassador? Sarah asked quietly. Marcus turned away from the viewport and the shimmering energy barrier beyond. His eyes hardened with determination. Now we stop apologizing for who we are. We stop trying to be something we're not. They wanted to lock us away because we're too dangerous? Fine. Let's use these years to become everything they feared we could be. Sir? Captain, inform Earth Command that we have work to do. The Assembly thinks they've caged humanity, but they've really just given us time to sharpen our teeth. Marcus smiled, but there was no humor in it. They called us primitive, barbaric, warlike. Show them what humanity can really accomplish when we stop holding back. As the homeward bound passed through the barrier and entered the prison, that was now humanity's entire universe, Marcus made a silent promise. This wasn't the end of humanity's story in the stars. This was just the beginning of a new chapter. And when they finally broke free, when they returned to the galaxy, the Assembly would learn a hard truth. You don't cage a species that conquered its own world through sheer stubborn will and expect them to stay caged forever. 5 years passed in silence. The galaxy moved on without humanity, barely remembering the aggressive species they had locked away. Life continued as it always had. Trade flourished. Diplomatic conferences resolved minor disputes. The Assembly congratulated itself on maintaining peace. But in the deep dark between the stars, something else was growing. Reports began filtering in from the Outer Rim territories. Colonies going silent. Ships disappearing without distress calls. At first, the Assembly dismissed these incidents as isolated events. Space was vast and accidents happened. Then entire star systems stopped communicating. The first concrete evidence came from an automated monitoring station on the edge of civilized space. Its recordings showed ships unlike any in the galactic database. They were massive, angular, and covered in dark armor that seemed to absorb light itself. They moved in perfect formation, hundreds of vessels acting as one. And they didn't negotiate, didn't communicate, didn't offer any warning before they attacked. The Ravager horde had arrived. The Assembly's first response was typical. Send diplomatic envoys, attempt communication, offer trade agreements. The envoys never returned. Their ships were found later, torn apart and drifting in space. Every crew member dead, every data core wiped clean. The second response was to send peacekeepers, the lightly armed patrol vessels that resolved disputes between member worlds. 50 ships responded to a distress call from a mining colony. None came back. Long-range sensors detected only debris and the dark silhouettes of Ravager vessels stripping the colony bare. That's when panic began to spread. Chancellor Vorin called an emergency session of the Assembly. The chamber that had once condemned humanity now buzzed with fear and confusion. Representatives demanded action, protection, answers. But the Assembly had no answers. They had built their entire civilization on the principle that all conflicts could be resolved peacefully. They had never prepared for an enemy that simply didn't care about peace. We must negotiate, insisted Representative Skresh of the Keltharians. Every species can be reasoned with. We need to understand what they want, what we can offer them. They want everything, replied Admiral Thorn of the Crystalline Mines, one of the few military commanders in the Assembly. Every world they've attacked has been stripped completely. Resources, technology, even the populations. They take it all and leave nothing behind. These aren't raiders or pirates. This is a force that consumes entire civilizations. Then we fight, declared Ambassador Ilmara of the Singing Gardens, her petals bright red with alarm. We have defense fleets. We have weapons. We can protect ourselves. Admiral Thorn's crystalline form dimmed with concern. Our defense fleets were designed to intimidate, not to fight actual wars. We have no combat experience, no battle tactics, no warrior tradition. We've spent 5,000 years building a peace so perfect that we forgot how to defend it. The debate continued for hours, but no solutions emerged. Every proposal seemed inadequate against an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with or intimidated. The Ravager horde continued its advance, consuming system after system, growing stronger with each conquest. Deep in the Assembly's strategic command center, Admiral Thorn studied tactical displays with growing despair. His analysts had calculated the Ravagers' rate of advancement. At their current speed, they would reach the core worlds, including the Assembly Hall itself, within 2 standard years. And the Assembly had no idea how to stop them. "Sir," one of his junior officers called out, "we're detecting something unusual at the edge of the Sol barrier." Thorn moved to the sensor station. "What kind of unusual?" "Energy readings, sir. Massive ones. Something inside the barrier is powering up. The precursor devices are registering fluctuations in the containment field." Thorn felt his crystal matrix resonate with sudden hope mixed with dread. The Sol barrier hadn't shown any unusual activity in 5 years. Humanity had been silent, imprisoned, forgotten. But now something was happening. "Keep monitoring," Thorn ordered. "And alert the Chancellor. I think humanity is about to remind us they exist." Inside the Sol system, in high orbit above Earth, a ship hung in space that should not have been possible. It was enormous. nearly 3 kilometers long, shaped like a spearhead aimed at the stars. Its hull was midnight black, covered in geometric patterns that seemed to drink in light. Weapon emplacements lined every surface, some recognizable, others completely new. The ship radiated power on a scale that made every sensor scream in disbelief. On the bridge of this impossible vessel, Captain Elena Voss studied the barrier that had caged her species for 5 years. She was young for a starship commander, only 38. But her eyes held the determination of someone who had spent those 5 years preparing for this moment. "Status report," she commanded. Her first officer, Commander James Park, checked his displays. All systems nominal. Barrier breach calculations complete. Weapons charged. Crew ready. We're go for launch. Elena nodded slowly. Beyond the viewports, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the black of space. Somewhere down there, the people she had sworn to protect were watching, hoping, praying that 5 years of desperate work would pay off. "Open a channel to Earth Command," she ordered. Admiral Marcus Reed's face appeared on the main screen. The former ambassador had returned to military service. His diplomatic career ended by the Assembly's judgment. Now he commanded all of Earth's defense forces, and he had overseen the construction of the ship that would carry humanity back to the stars. "Prometheus Dawn," Marcus said, his voice filled with emotion he didn't try to hide. "You are cleared for departure. Show them what we've built. Show them what humanity can do when we stop apologizing for our strength." "Yes, sir," Elena replied. "We'll see you on the other side." The channel closed. Elena took a deep breath and turned to her crew. 87 men and women, the best humanity had to offer. All volunteers, all knowing they might not return. But also knowing that someone had to take this step. Someone had to break the cage. "All hands, this is the captain," Elena announced shipwide. 5 years ago, the Galactic Assembly judged us unworthy of the stars. They locked us away because we refused to be helpless, because we built weapons to defend ourselves, because we fought back when attacked. Today we prove them wrong. Today we show the galaxy that humanity doesn't stay down. Helm, take us forward. Maximum power. Let's go home." The Prometheus Dawn's engines flared to life, burning with energies that humanity had developed during their imprisonment. The ship accelerated toward the barrier, building speed, building power. The precursor devices that formed the cage began to pulse with alarm, their ancient systems recognizing a threat they hadn't anticipated. The moment of impact came like a thunderclap across the solar system. The Prometheus Dawn struck the barrier at a speed that should have vaporized any normal ship. But this was no normal ship. This was 5 years of human ingenuity, determination, and refusal to accept defeat made manifest in metal and energy. The barrier held for exactly 3 seconds, then it shattered like glass. Alarm screamed across every monitoring station in the galaxy. The impossible had happened. The Sol barrier, built with precursor technology that had lasted for millions of years, had been breached. And emerging from the broken cage came a warship that made every military analyst freeze in terror. The Prometheus Dawn had broken free. Humanity had returned to the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Return of the Phoenix. The emergency klaxons wailing through the Grand Assembly Hall created a symphony of panic that would have been almost musical if it weren't so terrifying. Chancellor Voron materialized in the center of the command chamber, his luminous form flickering with barely controlled alarm. Around him, holographic displays showed the impossible. The Sol barrier, intact for 5 years, now showed a massive breach, and something was coming through. "Report." Voron's mental voice cracked like thunder through the minds of every officer present. Admiral Thorne's crystalline body pulsed rapidly, a sign of extreme stress in his species. "Chancellor, the breach is expanding. Whatever came through the barrier didn't just slip past it. They broke it, shattered the containment field like it was nothing more than glass." "That's impossible," gasped Representative Skresh, who had rushed to the command center. "Precursor technology cannot be broken by any known force in the galaxy." "Apparently humanity developed an unknown force," Thorne replied grimly. He gestured to the main display where long-range sensors were painting a picture that made no sense. "The vessel is massive, 3 kilometers in length. Power output exceeds our largest dreadnoughts by a factor of 50, and it's heading directly toward us." Chancellor Voron forced himself to remain calm. 5 years. They had given humanity 5 years alone, isolated, cut off from galactic technology and trade. What had they been doing during that time? What had they built? Attempt communication, Vorin ordered. And scramble the defense fleet. I want every available warship between that vessel and this station. The communication officer, a singing garden named Petrel, adjusted her frequencies. Channel open, Chancellor. They're receiving but not responding. Human vessel, this is Chancellor Vorin of the Galactic Assembly. You have violated your containment. You are ordered to power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Respond immediately. Silence stretched for long seconds. Then a voice came through clear and calm, speaking in perfect galactic common tongue. Chancellor Vorin, this is Captain Elena Voss of the United Earth ship Prometheus Dawn. We are not here as prisoners seeking parole. We are here as neighbors responding to your distress signals. Vorin's form brightened with confusion. Distress signals? We have sent no communications to your system. No, you haven't, Elena's voice agreed. But your colonies have been screaming for help for months. Your defense fleets have been broadcasting emergency calls as they died. Your civilizations have been crying out as they're consumed by the Ravager horde. We heard every word. The command center fell silent. How had humanity been monitoring galactic communications from inside their prison? The barrier was supposed to block everything. The barrier should have prevented you from receiving any signals, Thorne said, his analytical mind racing, unless you found a way to breach it without breaking it completely. We had 5 years and nothing else to do, Elena replied. There was no boast in her voice, just simple fact. You gave us a cage and thought that was the end of the story. But humanity has never been good at accepting cages. We studied the barrier. We analyzed its structure. We learned how it worked. And then we built something that could break it. Your presence here is illegal, Vorin declared, trying to regain control of the situation. You were exiled for your violent nature. That judgment has not been rescinded. I'm aware of that, Chancellor, but I'm also aware that the Ravager horde has consumed 47 star systems in the past 6 months, that your defense fleets have lost every engagement, that entire civilizations are being wiped out while you debate diplomatic solutions to a military problem. Each word hit like a physical blow because they were all true. The Assembly had been paralyzed by the Ravager advance, unable to adapt their peaceful philosophy to an enemy that only understood destruction. We don't need your help, Skresh hissed, his pride overriding his fear. We will find a peaceful solution. We always have. Really? Elena's voice carried a hint of steel. Tell that to the 3 million Keltharians who died when the Ravagers hit your colony world of Sarth 7 last week. Tell that to the Singing Garden settlements that were burned to ash. Tell that to the crystalline mind matrices that were harvested for their computational power. They all believed in your peaceful solutions too, right up until they stopped believing anything at all. The brutal truth of her words silenced even Skresh. Representative Ilmara, her petals drooping with grief, spoke softly. What do you propose, Captain Voss? Let us help. The Ravager horde is a threat to all civilized life, including humanity. Our quarantine cage doesn't mean much if the entire galaxy burns. Give us a chance to prove that our strength can be used to protect, not just destroy. Admiral Thorne studied the tactical displays with a military mind that had been screaming the same truth for months. Chancellor, we need help. Our losses are unsustainable. In 2 months, maybe less, the Ravagers will reach the core worlds. If this human ship is even half as capable as the sensors suggest, we cannot afford to refuse. They were exiled for being too violent, Vorin protested, but his conviction was weakening. And now we need violence, Thorne replied bluntly. We need warriors.
We need weapons.
We need someone who knows how to fight and win. Our 5,000 years of peace made us weak, Chancellor. We forgot that sometimes the only way to preserve life is to be willing to take it from those who would destroy everything. The debate that followed was fierce, but brief. Fear has a way of cutting through ideology. In the end, the vote was close but decisive. The Prometheus Dawn would be allowed to dock under guard. Captain Voss would be given a chance to present her proposal. But the Assembly made it clear, one wrong move, and every weapon in the defense fleet would target the human ship. Elena Voss stood in the airlock of the Prometheus Dawn, preparing to enter the Grand Assembly Hall for the first time. She wore a simple uniform of dark blue, the silver emblem of Earth prominent on her chest. No weapons, no armor, just the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was walking into. Commander Park stood beside her, his expression concerned. Captain, you don't have to do this. We could transmit our tactical data and let them coordinate the defense from here. Elena shook her head. No, they need to see us. They need to look a human in the eye and remember that we're not monsters. We're just people who refuse to lie down and die. She smiled slightly. Besides, someone needs to teach these enlightened civilizations how to throw a proper punch. The airlock opened and Elena stepped into the assembly hall for the first time. The chamber was smaller than she expected, more intimate. Perhaps 50 representatives were present, not the hundreds that had voted to exile humanity 5 years ago. These were the leaders, the decision-makers, the ones who would determine if humanity's return meant alliance or renewed conflict. Chancellor Varine floated at the center of the chamber, his light form pulsing with barely controlled anxiety. Captain Voss, welcome to the Grand Assembly Hall, though I wish the circumstances of your arrival were different. As do I, Chancellor, Elena replied, walking to the center of the chamber with confident strides. But we work with the reality we have, not the one we wish for. Admiral Thorne stepped forward, his crystalline body refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns.
Captain, our sensors cannot fully analyze your vessel.
The hull composition is unknown. The power signatures are unlike anything in our databases. What exactly did humanity build during their isolation? Elena smiled. We built what we needed to survive, Admiral. When you locked us in that cage, you didn't just cut us off from the galaxy. You forced us to look inward, to use every resource in our solar system to push our technology beyond anything we thought possible. The Prometheus Dawn is the result of 5 years of desperate innovation. She gestured, and a holographic display appeared, showing technical specifications that made every military analyst in the room lean forward with fascination and horror. Our hull is composed of collapsed matter weaving, a technology we developed by studying the precursor barrier itself. It's nearly indestructible. Our power core uses controlled quantum singularities, providing energy output that exceeds anything you've built. Our weapon systems combine human ingenuity with principles we reverse-engineered from precursor technology. And our crew has been training in combat simulations every single day for 5 years. You weaponize precursor technology, Foran said, his mental voice heavy with accusation. That knowledge is supposed to be used only for peaceful purposes. Precursor technology is just technology, Chancellor. It's not inherently peaceful or violent. It's what you do with it that matters. And right now what matters is stopping the Ravagers before they consume every civilization in this galaxy. Representative Ilmara rustled her petals nervously. Even if we accept your help, Captain, what makes you think one ship can make a difference? The Ravagers number in the thousands. Our entire defense fleet couldn't stop them. Elena's expression hardened. Your defense fleet was designed to look impressive and intimidate pirates. Our ship was designed to win wars. There's a difference. A big one. She manipulated the holographic display, bringing up recent battle recordings. The Ravagers are formidable, but they're not invincible. They rely on overwhelming numbers and brute force. They have no subtlety, no tactics beyond attack everything. That makes them predictable. And predictable enemies can be beaten. Admiral Thorne studied the tactical analysis with growing excitement. You've been planning this. You've been studying their attack patterns. From the moment we heard your first distress call, Elena confirmed. We've monitored every battle, analyzed every engagement. We know their strengths and their weaknesses, and we know how to hurt them. Show us, Foran demanded. Elena nodded and expanded the display. The Ravagers have a command structure, but it's distributed. Every ship contains a fraction of their collective intelligence. Destroy enough ships and the rest become confused, disorganized. They're like a hive mind without a central brain. Hit them hard enough, fast enough, and they'll break. She highlighted several star systems on the map. Here, here, and here. These are recent attack sites. The Ravagers are still harvesting resources from these worlds. They're vulnerable, spread out, focused on gathering rather than fighting. If we strike now with combined forces, we can bloody their nose, show them that this galaxy isn't defenseless prey. Skresh hissed skeptically. And what then? Even if we win one battle, there are thousands more of them out there. Then we win another battle. And another. And another. Elena's voice carried absolute conviction. You judge us for being warriors, but warriors understand something you've forgotten. Freedom isn't free. Peace isn't the natural state of the universe. Both must be fought for, defended, earned every single day. The Ravagers are testing you, seeing if you'll fight back. So far, you've failed that test. It's time to pass it. The chamber fell silent as her words sank in. These civilizations had built their entire society on the principle that violence was never the answer. But now they faced an enemy that didn't care about their principles, their philosophy, their 5,000 years of enlightened peace. The Ravagers only cared about consumption. Chancellor Vorin dimmed slightly, a sign of deep thought in his species. Finally, he spoke. If we accept your proposal, Captain Voss, what do you require? Coordinates for the nearest Ravager fleet, full tactical data on their capabilities, and permission for the Prometheus Dawn to operate freely in defense of civilized space. We'll handle the rest. You want us to just turn you loose? Skresh demanded. With that warship? How do we know you won't turn on us once the Ravagers are defeated? Elena met his gaze steadily. Because unlike the Ravagers, we actually care whether civilizations survive or not. We didn't break out of our cage to conquer you, Ambassador. We broke out to stand with you. There's a difference, and I hope you're wise enough to see it. The vote that followed was closer than the one that had exiled humanity 5 years ago. But in the end, desperation won over pride. The Prometheus Dawn would be given its chance. Captain Elena Voss would lead a strike force against the nearest Ravager fleet. The galaxy would see what humanity had become during their isolation. 3 days later, the Prometheus Dawn led a fleet of 50 assembly warships into the Tars system, where a Ravager harvesting operation was stripping a mining colony bare. The alien ships looked like floating cities of dark metal, massive and menacing. Sensor data showed 200 Ravager vessels, all focused on extracting resources from the dying world below. On the bridge of the Prometheus Dawn, Elena watched the tactical display with calm focus. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency, every person knowing their role perfectly. 5 years of training was about to be tested in the crucible of actual combat. Captain, the assembly ships are in formation behind us, Commander Park reported. They're waiting for your command, Elena nodded. Open a channel to all vessels. When the channel opened, she spoke with quiet authority. All ships, this is Captain Voss. Today we remind the Ravager horde that this galaxy is not theirs for the taking. Today we show them that civilized life will not go quietly into extinction. Today we fight not as separate species or divided civilizations, but as one united force defending our home. All ships weapons free. Let's light them up. The Prometheus Dawn surged forward, its weapon systems coming alive with devastating power. Railguns that could punch through mountains opened fire, sending projectiles at relativistic speeds into the Ravager fleet. Plasma cannons heated to stellar temperatures carved burning lines through the darkness. Missile pods launched swarms of smart weapons that danced through space like angry hornets. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Ravagers. Ships that had seemed invulnerable to assembly weapons exploded under the Prometheus Dawn's assault. Hulls cracked. Reactors detonated. In the first 30 seconds of combat, Elena's ship destroyed 15 Ravager vessels. The Ravager fleet turned to face this new threat, their collective intelligence recognizing danger. They abandoned the mining operation and surged toward the Prometheus Dawn with murderous intent. But Elena had anticipated this now, she commanded. The assembly fleet, which had been hanging back, suddenly accelerated. Following the tactics Elena had taught them, they struck the Ravager formation from multiple angles simultaneously. The Ravagers, focused entirely on the Prometheus Dawn, were caught off guard. Assembly weapons, ineffective against Ravager armor in previous battles, now targeted specific weak points that human analysis had identified. The battle raged for 2 hours. The Prometheus Dawn moved through the Ravager fleet like a shark among fish, its advanced systems and experienced crew making it nearly untouchable. The assembly ships, following human tactical coordination, fought with a cohesion they had never achieved before. When the last Ravager ship exploded in a burst of white-hot debris, the silence that followed was deafening. The assembly fleet had suffered losses, 12 ships destroyed, 9 damaged. But the Ravager fleet had been annihilated. 200 enemy vessels reduced to scrap metal and cooling plasma. Captain, Commander Park said softly, his voice filled with emotion. We did it. We actually did it. Elena allowed herself a small smile. We did, but this is just the beginning. She opened a channel to the assembly fleet. All ships form up for return to base. We have a lot to discuss about the next phase of operations. As the combined fleet made its way back to the assembly hall, news of the victory spread across the galaxy at light speed. The impossible had happened. The Ravager horde, which had seemed unstoppable, had been defeated. And the victory had been led by the species the Assembly had exiled for being too violent. The mood in the Grand Assembly Hall was transformed when Captain Voss returned. The same representatives who had viewed humanity with fear and suspicion now looked at her with something approaching awe. Chancellor Voren himself greeted her at the airlock. "Captain Voss," he said, his mental voice warm for the first time, "you have given us something we had lost. Hope." Elena nodded respectfully. "Hope is good, Chancellor. But hope alone won't win this war. We have a lot of work ahead of us. The Ravagers will adapt to our tactics. They'll come back stronger. We need to be ready." Over the following weeks, everything changed. Human military advisors began training Assembly Defense Forces in combat tactics. Human engineers shared defensive technologies. Human strategists coordinated fleet movements across dozens of star systems. The species that had been exiled for their violent nature became the galaxy's shield against the darkness. The Prometheus Dawn became the flagship of a growing resistance fleet. More human ships emerged from the Sol system, each one bringing new weapons, new technologies, new ideas. The barrier that had once imprisoned humanity was left broken, a reminder of the mistake the Assembly had made. Not everyone was happy with humanity's return. Some representatives still feared human influence, worried that the warriors would become conquerors once the Ravagers were defeated, but those voices grew quieter with each victory. Each world saved, each civilization preserved. 6 months after the Battle of Tars, Captain Elena Voss stood once again in the Grand Assembly Hall. But this time, she stood not as a supplicant or an exile, but as an honored guest. Chancellor Voren addressed a full session, every representative present. 6 months ago, Voren began, his mental voice carrying to every mind in the chamber, we faced extinction. The Ravager horde seemed unstoppable. Our philosophy of peace, which had served us for 5,000 years, proved inadequate against an enemy that only understood strength. In our darkest hour, the species we had exiled returned, not with vengeance but with open hands offering help. He turned toward Elena. "Captain Voss, on behalf of the Galactic Assembly, I offer humanity our deepest apology. We judged you by our standards, not your own. We saw your strength as a threat rather than a gift. We were wrong. Your return has saved countless lives and reminded us of a fundamental truth. Peace must be protected by those willing to stand against chaos." Elena stepped forward, her expression serious. "Chancellor, we don't need your apology. We need your partnership. Humanity isn't perfect. We're aggressive, stubborn, sometimes too quick to fight. But those traits also make us survivors. And right now, this galaxy needs survivors more than it needs philosophers." She looked around the chamber at the hundreds of representatives. "The Ravagers are still out there. We've hurt them, slowed them down, but we haven't won yet. That will take all of us working together, not as separate species with separate agendas, but as one united civilization defending our shared home. Humanity offers you our strength, our weapons, our warriors. In return, we ask only to be accepted as equals, not as threats to be caged." The vote that followed was very different from the one 5 years ago. This time it was unanimous. Humanity was not just welcomed back into the Galactic Assembly. They were given a permanent seat on the Security Council, their military expertise recognized as essential to galactic defense. As Elena left the chamber, she looked out through the crystal walls at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the Ravagers were regrouping, planning their next move. The war was far from over, but now at least, the galaxy stood united. She thought about Ambassador Marcus Reed, who had stood in this very chamber 5 years ago and been told humanity was too dangerous for civilized society. She thought about the 5 years of isolation, the desperate innovation, the refusal to accept defeat. She thought about every human who had worked to build the Prometheus Dawn and the fleet that followed. They had been exiled for their strength. They had returned as saviors. And in doing so, they had proved the most important truth of all. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is try to eliminate those who know how to fight. Because eventually you'll need them to fight for you. The Prometheus Dawn hung in space outside the assembly hall, its dark hull gleaming in the starlight. It was no longer a symbol of humanity's defiance. It was a symbol of their partnership with the wider galaxy, a reminder that strength and compassion could coexist, that warriors could be heroes, that sometimes the best way to preserve peace was to be prepared for war. And as the ship's engines ignited, carrying Captain Voss and her crew back toward the front lines. Every civilization in the galaxy knew one thing for certain. Humanity had returned to the stars, and the galaxy was better for it.